Cloud. Okay. So in our previous class, we have been talking about the various glandular cells. We spoke about the parietal cells producing the hydrochloric acid and how HCl can convert the pepsinogen into the pepsin. The pepsinogen is produced by the chief cells, right? And if you remember last class, we said that the pepsinogen is a zymogen, an inactive form of an enzyme, which is activated only by your hydrochloric acid. Then we said that how it can denature the proteins, how it gives us immunity by killing the bacteria, right? In today's class, we have to talk about the mucous neck cells or surface mucous cells, okay? Since you know that you are already aware that the you know the uh, stomach produces acid, and that acid has such a low pH, the hydrochloric acid, isn't it? And we don't want that acid to damage our stomach, right? So that is why we have mucus produced by the, for example, surface mucus cells. Okay, they produce mucus, and that mucus basically protects the stomach wall from the damage. Okay, and this mucus, okay, it produces a layer. Okay, it produces a layer. For example, if you have here, there will be a layer of mucus, okay, so that the hydrochloric acid cannot damage the epithelial layer, okay, of our alimentary canal, right? That is a very, very important function. Okay, so we call them mucus cells, right? So they have an exocrine function, okay? And other than that, we also have goblet cells in the intestines. They also produce the mucus, okay? So other than that, we also have the mucous neck cells, which also produces the thin mucus. And it is said that it buffers the gastric acid so that it cannot damage the surface epithelia. But much of the functions, there are many functions which we are not aware about these mucous neck cells, these pink color, dark pink colored cells which you see over here. Okay. And then we have the anterior endocrine cells, which are also called as the G cells. Right? We know that the G cells produce the hormone called as the gastrin, right? And we discussed that in chapter number 9, how gastrin hormone regulates the secretion of the stomach. It stimulates the hydrochloric acid, stimulates the parietal cells to produce more and more hydrochloric acid. Okay, it acts on the parietal cells, the gastrin hormone. Okay, and we also spoke about it in chapter number 9 that it controls the motility, movement of the stomach, right? So that is also one more function of the gastrin hormone, right? So the mucus produced on the stomach creates a barrier, okay? So that can be a physical barrier because of the mucus, or that can be a chemical barrier as well, okay? You know what? Even the epithelial cells, if you remember in last semester, we spoke about that there are tight junctions present between the epithelial cells of the alimentary canal, right? If you remember the tight junctions, these tight junctions prevent the leaking of the gastric juice. It does not allow gastric juice to leak out, right? So even tight junctions play an important role in the mucosal barrier, right? And then we spoke about the G cells, how they stimulate the hydrochloric as production of hydrochloric acid. They act on the parietal cells, and they also control the motility of the stomach, right? That's what we spoke about. Okay. Then here is saying that if you remember, I think I told you that the most active part of the stomach is this pyloric part, right? It's thicker than the other part. So this part is more like a storage organ, right? Only this part is the organ which is basically for the, it's very active, okay? And finally, we have the chyme, and it's sent through the pyloric sphincter to the duodenum, first part of the stomach. We already spoke about that, about the pyloric sphincter. Okay, and then we have the small intestines, right? Small intestines is again all the kinds of digestions, chemical digestion, all, whether it's a digestion of carbohydrates, digestion of proteins, digestion of lipids, everything is completed in the small intestines, especially in the first part of small intestines, the duodenum. It has three parts, small intestines: duodenum, jejunum, and ileum, right? So it's the duodenum where most of the digestion and the absorption would take place, right? Most of it, okay? And then we also have, if you remember, we spoke about that, we have a pyloric sphincter over here. So this is the duodenum. This is the first part of the stomach, okay? So here we have a pyloric sphincter, okay? And after that, as you can see here, look at this. And finally, when it meets here with the large intestines, we have the ileocecal valve, which makes sure that once the food which is absorbed and left over undigested food is sent through the ileocecal valve into the large intestines. Okay, and we also spoke about that how mesentery, the double layer of the double layered membrane, okay, that how that holds the small intestines with the body wall, does not allow the intestines to get tangled, okay. But the most important part to note down here is the all the kinds of digestions, you know, they actually are completed in the small intestines, and this is the area where most of the absorption would take place, right? So this is the mesentery we spoke about, you know. Okay, these are the three areas: duodenum, jejunum, and the ileum. So this is the shortest and the most active part. This is the duodenum, right? This is the duodenum, which is covering the head of the pancreas. Okay, so this is the middle part and this is the last part. Okay, so the enzymes produced here are either we have the pancreas producing the enzymes, digestive enzymes, okay, or we have the intestinal cells, okay, the special exocrine or the endocrine cells, which also produces the enzymes or the hormones, okay. And then the bile also reaches from the liver. We'll talk about that in our today's class, okay, how bile helps in the digestion of the fat, okay. So all these things are released through a small opening called as the duodenal papilla over here. So bile is produced in the liver, stored in the gallbladder. Then when the food comes here in the duodenum, so cholecystokinin is the hormone which causes contraction of the gallbladder, and that's how the bile is released and reaches to a cup-shaped organ here. Okay, it's like this, you know, a cup, or you can say a duct-shaped organ called as a hepatopancreatic ampulla, right? So it's stored over here. So at the same time, pancreas produces the pancreatic juice, which is rich in so many digestive enzymes. It is also sent into this ampulla, right? So then we have a small opening here called as the duodenal papilla. Okay, once the food is here, okay, then only the sphincter over here. There's a sphincter over here. This is the sphincter over here, right? The sphincter relaxes and allows the bile and the pancreatic juice, okay, to act on the food over here. So it can act on the food over here. Did you all understand? So bile produced by the liver, stored in the gallbladder, okay, and it gets stored in the ampulla, hepatopancreatic ampulla, this one ampulla over here, right? And at the same time, pancreas produces the pancreatic juice. It is also stored in the ampulla. So when the food is here, then only these are released through the duodenal papilla. So how much to release, when to release, okay, then we have a sphincter here, okay, which contracts and relaxes based on the whether we want to release the pancreatic juice or the bile or not, right? And this sphincter, okay, it is controlled by the hormone. Do you remember which hormone controls this sphincter? We did this in chapter number 9. Does anyone remember that it was the last table in chapter number 9? Does anyone remember the name of the hormone which controls opening and closing of this sphincter? Nobody? Yes, ladies. Cholecystokinin, remember? We spoke about cholecystokinin, and we also spoke about secretin hormone. Remember, guys? Can you all hear me? Yes. Yes, absolutely, right? So it's the cholecystokinin and the secretin. These two hormones play a very, very important role. We will come back to those hormones once again, once we discuss the physiology again. Okay. And then what is so special about the small intestines? As I told you that this is an organ where the maximum amount of absorption would take place. So of course you would expect that it has the microvilli, it has the villi, and it has the plici circularis. Okay, what is that? Now let's pay attention. We have three types of modifications in the mucosa of the small intestines. If this is the mucosa of the small intestines, it is not as smooth as you can see over here. No, not at all. It doesn't look like this. Okay, the mucosa is thrown into various folds. Look at this, various folds. So what do we call them? These finger-like projections are called as the villi, okay, which are almost 1 millimeter tall. Okay, and what is the function of this villi? Okay, and if you see here, this villi has lot of blood supply. Look at this. This is the villi, the finger-like projections. And look at this. Internally, it has veins, it has capillaries, and it also has special type of these lymphatic vessels, which are called as the lacteals. So lacteals are special kind of lymphatic vessels present in the small intestines. Their main function is to absorb the fat, okay, which is being digested there. Okay, and then if you take one villi, what do you see? That we have something called as a microvilli. Okay, what is a microvilli? If I take one cell from here, this one cell is not exactly like this. It doesn't have a plasma membrane like this. Okay, rather this one cell has a plasma membrane which is also what? Invaginated. Look at this. Do you see this? This is called as the microvilli. Microvilli. Right? So did you all understand the difference between villi and the microvilli? Villi or villus looks like this. And then if I take one cell out of the villi, it looks something like this. Right? And as you can see over here, its plasma membrane is invaginated and it's called as the brush border, as you can see here. And soon we'll talk about there are many enzymes which are released by the brush border, which also helps in the digestion of the proteins or the carbohydrates. Okay, so they are called as the microvilli. Okay, they are the cytoplasmic or the plasma membrane extensions. As you can see, it gives the fizzy appearance. Do you see it here? It gives a fizzy appearance to the plasma, to the intestines, right? And then the last one was a circular folds. What are circular folds? Look at this. I think we had a diagram for that. Look at this. These are the circular folds, right? These ones, right? So what are these circular folds? They're called as the plici circularis or plici circularis, right? These are the deeper folds of the mucosa and the submucosa. So they're deeper. They're not only in the mucous membrane, they go a little deeper, right? So they are the deeper folds in the submucosa, right? And they're the permanent folds. They're almost 1 centimeter tall. Can you believe how much is 1 centimeter? Remember, villi were 1 millimeter tall, but they are 1 centimeter tall, right? So the reason why we have these circular folds or villi or microvilli, okay? Can anyone tell me what is the main reason why we have circular folds, villi or a microvilli in the small intestines?
To increase the surface area
So to increase the surface area, very good,
for
wonderful.
absorption.
Absorption, which can maximize absorption. Absolutely, Shata, very good. Right? So because these circular plici circularis or villi or microvilli, right? So as the food reaches over here, it has to move through this, then right? So it simply increases the surface area so that the contact time of the food here is increased, so that by that time we can do maximum absorption of the food. So do these circular folds or villi or micro, do they disappear like ruggy? If you remember ruggy, we studied in the stomach. So do they disappear or they're permanently there? These folds. Yes, ladies, what do you think? Absolutely. If you remember ruggy, they disappears, right? If your stomach is empty, ruggy is there. If your stomach is not empty, your stomach is filled, then ruggy disappears. But remember that these folds are there forever. They don't disappear. Right? So this is their job to do. They always help in the absorption of the food. So we need them all the time. Okay. So this is a very important part of the small intestines, just to make sure that uh, the, the absorption, your small intestines are meant for two things, digestion and the absorption. All kinds of digestion finish in the small intestines and absorption is maximum in the small intestines. Okay. Then we move on to the large intestines. Okay. So what are the functions of the large intestines? Why do we have large intestines, right? So do we have, first of all, let's discuss anatomy quickly, then we'll discuss the functions. It has many divisions, like cecum is this the first part. Then from the cecum we have the appendix hanging on. This is the colon, the ascending colon, the transverse colon, the descending colon, the sigmoid colon, rectum, anus, right? So these are the subdivisions. And then we have a valve over here called as a ileocecal valve right over here, right? Now, what is the function of the large intestines? So do we have any food breakdown happening in large intestines, ladies? Do we have any enzymes produced the way there are plenty of enzymes produced in the brush border of the small intestines? Do we have something like that? No way. Yes, of course not. No food breakdown here, but yes, a small amount of digestion will take place because we have certain bacteria, the gut bacteria, the enteric bacteria. They always stay in our large intestines, right? So if just in case some amount of proteins or carbohydrates are undigested, right, they can be still digested here, but by the fermentation, not by the enzymes. Remember, this is a very important point to note down here. No enzyme is produced by your large intestines. It's just the bacteria which helps in the digestion by the fermentation process. Okay. And then we also have some kind of vitamins like vitamin K that is also produced in the large intestines and that can be absorbed in the large intestines. They're made by the bacteria, right? And finally, the water absorption from the food starts from the small intestines, but then it continues through the large intestines. So as the food reaches to the large intestines, your water is continuously being absorbed and absorbed and absorbed. If the fecal matter, the waste products, will stay for a very long time in the large intestines, then the fecal matter can become more and more dried out, right? Because the water absorption will continuously happen. The electrolytes will be absorbed, like sodium chloride, they will be also absorbed here, right? And then we have oh, hi. Do you mind have a class? Is it okay? Okay, thank you, dear. My classroom is not working today. Okay, thank you, dear. Okay, okay. So, what was I talking about? Yeah. So we were talking about the absorption of water, okay, and the electrolytes would take place in the large intestines, right? And finally, the last function of the large intestines would be that the fecal matter, right, that is pushed forward towards the anus by the large intestines. Okay, so points to remember over here: no food breakdown in the large intestines, okay, except a very small amount of digestion by the bacteria, the enteric bacteria in the large intestine, right? So if in case any proteins or the carbohydrates are left undigested, they will be digested here by the process of fermentation. Remember, no enzymes are produced in the large intestines the way we spoke about, microvilli producing the brush border enzymes. Of course not, right? So nothing like that will happen in the large intestines. Okay. And finally, we said that the vitamins, right? The vitamins like your vitamin K, okay, they're again produced by our gut flora, bacterial flora, okay, in the large intestines. And the final job is the absorption of water, concentrating the excreta, right? So the more, as I said, that more and more time the excreta will remain in the large intestines, the water will keep on absorbing and absorbing and drying it out, right? And the electrolyte absorption, sodium chloride absorption will again take place in the large intestines. And the final job of it would be the pushing the fecal matter towards the anus so that it can be eliminated as early as possible. Is it clear? So remember, no digestive enzymes are produced in the large intestines. Okay. So as we will discuss the physiology of the intestines in more detail, right? So we will discuss about the haustral contractions. What are haustral contractions? Okay, how the waste products are concentrated there in the large intestines. We'll talk about that once we discuss the physiology of it. Okay, and like gut flora is very, very important for the large intestines. That's why you might have heard that it's a good idea always to eat uh, curd, zabadi. We all eat curd, zabadi, or okay. So that is very, very rich in the lactobacillus, right? That increases the growth of these bacteria, right? The fermented bacteria, and it's always a good idea to eat fermented foods, right? They also helps in the what increasing. They also helps in increase in the content of the bacteria in our large intestines, right? Is it clear? Everybody, any questions? So where will the vitamin K production and the absorption will take place? What do you think? Where is vitamin K produced and absorbed? Is it in the small or the large intestines? Absolutely. Very good, Haifa. Yes. Yes. It's produced by the fermented bacteria over here, right? Wonderful. Okay. And then if you remember, we spoke about that we have remember the mast, the mucosa associated lymphoid tissue, the MALT, right? See, MALT. We spoke about that in the previous chapter, right? So lymphoid follicles, you will see that they're everywhere in the large intestines, right? So that is like so since we have so much of lot of gut flora in the large intestines, right? So your gut is populated by so many bacteria. So at the same time, we might need protection, okay, against various microorganisms. Okay, for that we have the MALT, mucosa associated lymphoid tissue. Okay, and if you remember, we spoke about the appendix. Now we don't say appendix is a vestigial organ, because now we have learned that, we know that it's so rich in lymphoid follicles, giving us the protection against various microorganisms, gut flora. Okay, it has been a lot of researches are going on wherein it has been proved that especially after a very intense intestinal infection, sometimes we do have an intestinal infection, right? Wherein because of the frequent stools coming out, because of a lot of water coming out of the large intestines, right? So the gut flora is depopulated. So it's not very, we don't have a large amount of bacteria in the gut. So at that time, we have the appendix. Appendix becomes the source of the bacteria at that time, right? So they migrate from the appendix and, and populate our gut flora, right? So I guess appendix plays a very, very important role now, right? And we also spoke about the appendicitis. Sometimes it gets inflamed. So at that time, there's no other chance. We have to remove the appendix at that time, right? And and at that time, because there is a risk of spilling over of because inflamed appendicitis has a fluid inside it. So that fluid might split in our peritoneal cavity. If you remember, I told you about the peritonitis, right? It might cause peritonitis, right? So that is why at that time, the best idea is not to think about the immunity. It's better to remove the appendix, because a person can die also, right? Because of that fluid which spills over the peritoneal cavity, which causes the peritonitis. Is it clear? So my question, do we have folds or a villi in the large intestines? We spoke about microvilli, we spoke about villi, we spoke about the various invaginations. Do we have all this in large intestines, guys and girls? No. Please remember that, no. Because as I said, it's not meant for absorption, right? Even though some amount of absorption would take place here, but no, it does not even release any enzymes. So yes, we have something called the crypts over there, but you don't have to know about the crypts, right? Because what is more important here is the epithelial tissue over here contains a lot of goblet cells. If we have columnar shaped epithelial cells over here, right, they contains goblet cells, and goblet cells will continuously release the mucus, right, which can lubricate the waste products over here. So the lubrication of the waste products can take place over here. Okay, and then at the end over here, at the in the rectum, the waste products are stored. Okay, so once the waste products are stored over here, then the impulse is sent to the brain, right? And then we have two types of sphincters over here: the external anal sphincter and the internal anal sphincter. External one, remember that it is voluntary. We can control it. Okay, whether you want to go to the washroom and remove the waste products, or we have the involuntary one, okay, which is the internal anal sphincter. Okay, internal one is the involuntary, right? So these sphincters that play a very, very important role when the waste have to be evacuated from our from the rectum, right? So they play a very, very important role over here. Okay, so no folds, no villi, no microvilli, nothing. Okay, they are not present in the large intestines. We just have the few crypts, and these crypts are very rich in the goblet cells producing the mucus. Is it clear, ladies? Any question? Are we okay till now? Okay, wonderful. Okay, great. Okay, now a very important point to remember over here. Okay, if you remember last time we spoke about the muscularis externa. Okay, do you remember we said that muscularis externa is made up of two layers of muscles, the internal circular and the external longitudinal? Remember that, guys? Yes, isn't it? But we again have an exception over here. Okay, the exception in the large intestines. What is the exception over here? Okay, if you see here, the muscularis externa here, okay, is basically reduced to the three bands of the muscles, which we call as a tinea coli. Okay, I'll show you the diagram in a while. Look at this. Okay, so here we have this musculus externa, it's not very smooth in the large intestines. As you can see over here, because of this, okay, because of this tinea coli, right, this has given a puckered appearance to the large intestines. Look at this. Look at this, right? And this puckered appearance is very, very important for the large intestines because it results in the formation of the what pockets in the small intestines, right? And as a waste products, they have to be stored for some time, okay, in the large intestines. So these pockets are very, very important, right? So for example, if you see here, let me draw it over here. Look at this. I can have a pocket over here where the waste can be stored over here, another pocket over here, okay. And these pockets are very, very important because they can result in the formation of what they can cause the haustral contractions, okay, which we'll talk about later on what they are, okay, the haustral contractions, okay. So it is the longitudinal muscle, not the inner circular one, right? The longitudinal muscle which has been reduced to 3 bands, okay. You can compare it with the, let's say you have a scarf. I'm going to draw it over here. Look at this. Let's say I have a scarf which looks like this, okay, and I put a ribbon like this. Look at it. This longitudinal one is the ribbon which I put on the scarf. Imagine if I try to pucker this ribbon, right? So what will happen? So I can have folds on my scarf. Usually, when I used to be in the class, I used to show it. I used to, bring the a small ribbon along with a small cloth in the classroom and show you how the tinea coli, how the longitudinal muscle, okay, is able to form the puckered appearance in the large intestines. But unfortunately, we are not in the class, so we have to rely on this diagram, okay. So it kind of it forms, this puckered appearance is there. Okay, so it only happens because the longitudinal muscle of our muscularis externa, okay, has been reduced. Okay, so and trust me, this muscle is sometimes called as a ribbon of colon. Yes, right. And when this muscle will contract, let's say if I shorten this ribbon, okay, so similarly, if this long-term muscle will contract, right, it will pucker the wall of the large intestine, which will result in the formation of a pocket in the large intestine or a sac in large intestine, okay, and that one sac is called as the haustra. And later on, we'll talk about the haustral contractions when we will discuss the physiology of it. Did you all understand what is a haustra? Let me show you another. Look at this. So this is your longitudinal muscle. See, I have one over here in the transverse colon. I have one over here, okay, in the descending colon. Look at the diagram. Look at how my pen is going on, right? As you can see how it's moving. So this is the one which is in the ascending colon. So one over here, one over here, one over here, right? So imagine when this longitudinal muscle will contract, okay? What will happen to the large intestines? Will they be smooth like this? Can you expect them like this in the way we have small intestines? No, of course not. So if you compare your small intestines and large intestines, your small intestines, they have a smooth appearance because there the longitudinal muscle is not reduced, okay? So there we don't have the tinea coli. Okay, this reduced muscle is called as a tinea coli. Okay, tinea is basically the ribbon of the coli, the ribbon of our large intestines. And this is one haustra. This is my one haustra, another haustra, another haustra, another haustra, right? So once we discuss the physiology, you will be able to understand what is the importance of each pocket, what is the importance of each haustra, okay? How the haustral contractions help in the movement of waste products throughout our large intestines. Are we okay about it? Any questions till now about the anatomy of the large intestines? Yes, ladies? All clear. Alhamdulillah. All clear. Great. No questions. Okay. Shall I move ahead? Okay. Great. So now we'll just discuss few accessory organs. Okay, if you remember when we started discussing, when we introduced this chapter, if you remember, I told you that we do not have only elementary canal. Imagine if we just have the mouth, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestines, like, so we will not be able to digest the food. Of course not. No ways. We also need the help of the tongue, we need the help of teeth, we need the help of liver, we need the help of pancreas, we need the help of so many other accessory organs, we need the help of gallbladder. We cannot digest fats unless and until we have a gallbladder producing the bile, which has the bile salts which cause emulsification of the fat, right? So we cannot actually digest the food unless and until we have the liver there. If you remember, we spoke about hepatic portal vein sending all the blood to the liver for further processing, whether that is the detoxification or mixing it with the macrophages or storing the glycogen, right? So we need to send the blood. So liver is an accessory organ, gallbladder is an accessory organ. And how can we ignore the importance of pancreas? How can we? Pancreas is like everything for the digestive system. And we are overly dependent on pancreas because pancreas, if you remember, we said in chapter number 9, we discussed that it has an endocrine role, producing the insulin and the glucagon. But that's not it. It also has a digestive role. You will see here in a while, we'll discuss the physiology, how important pancreas are because they produce n number of enzymes, okay, be it your amylase, be it your lipases, be it your trypsin, chymotrypsin, right? So many enzymes are produced by the pancreas, and okay, or even lipases to digest the fats, pancreatic lipase, right? So all kinds of digestion is completed in the small intestines. Okay, so the digestion of proteins, of carbohydrates or lipids, everything is completed in the small intestines, and that is possible only because of the presence of an organ called as the pancreas. So pancreas are able to produce all kinds of enzymes which completes the digestion of everything whatever we eat, whether it's a carbohydrate, whether it's a protein, or whether it is a lipid. Okay, and then how can we ignore the importance of teeth, mastication of food? Imagine if we don't have teeth, how will we chew the food? How will we break the food into smaller particles, right? And it's very important to break the food into smaller particles because it might help in doing what? It might increase the surface area, right? It might increase the surface area so that the enzymes can act on the food, right? So very, very important. And how can we ignore the importance of tongue, which helps in mixing the food, okay, with the enzymes? So very, very important, all these things. Okay, let's start discussing quickly about the teeth. So nothing much in detail over here. Okay, so before I start discussing about the teeth, do we have any question? Are we okay? We're going to discuss now the accessory organs in detail. This was just an introduction. Okay, so teeth are there to masticate the food, as you know that, right? Teeth are there to masticate the food. It helps in breaking the food, as I said, that into smaller particles so that it can be, the surface area of the particles will increase, and so that the enzymes can start acting on these smaller food particles. Okay, and that is very, 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 very important. And if you remember, I said that the carbohydrate digestion starts from the mouth itself, right? We have an amylase enzyme present in the mouth itself. So it's very, very important to chew the food, to masticate the food, so that the carbohydrate digestion will start from the mouth itself, right? So imagine we can't send a big piece of pizza into the stomach. Could we? Is it possible? Of course not, right? So yes, so increasing the surface area is very, very important. Okay, so that each and every enzyme can penetrate into the food particle and digest it very effectively. Very, very important. So we all know that that we have two sets of teeth. We have the deciduous teeth. Okay, so a baby usually by the age of 2 has all 20 teeth. Okay, and you know, if you see the diagram over here, this one, okay, this tooth is called as the incisor. This is the first one to appear. You might have observed that if you have small babies at your house, your siblings or your cousins, right? If you observe that, these are the incisors are the first one to arrive, isn't it? The first one to, erupt from the gums. Yes or no? Have you ever noticed that? Either from the lower jaw or from the top jaw, absolutely, right? And then by the age of 12, okay, see your these deciduous teeth or milk teeth, right? They will be replaced, okay. And we know that we all have 32 teeth in our mouth, right? Okay, and these third molars, also called as a wisdom teeth, so they might, we still have some time period for them, right? Because they never emerge or erupt early. So the right time for the, for these wisdom teeth are 17 to 25. Okay, so that is the right time to for these. So for some people it will erupt more early, like by the age of 17, but it can go till till 30 as well, right? So except these third molars, right? So all the teeth they all are replaced, okay, from deciduous to permanent by the age of 12. Okay, and then we have the incisors for cutting the food. We have the canines, these ones. Okay, so canines are there to tear the food, and then we have the molars and premolars to grind the food. Okay. And now if we look at the tooth, we have the two major regions over here. We have a crown, the visible part over here. The white part which you see is a crown. Okay. And then embedded deep into the gum. Gum is a connective tissue. Yes. I don't know whether you knew this before or not. It's a connective tissue. The gums which we have, okay, they are connective tissue. Okay. So then attached to the gum, we have this neck portion of the tooth, and then the portion which is not visible at all, okay, which is deep down into the alveolus. Last semester, chapter number 5. Remember what is alveoli? Does anyone remember what is alveolar or alveolus? Yes, Raneem? Where do we find alveolus or alveoli? What is it? Raneem, are you there? Are we connected? So that was in the lungs, not the other one. Now, we also have, okay, what is the tooth socket called? What is the tooth socket called? No. Didn't we speak about alveoli? Yes, we did, right? Chapter number 5 last semester, right? So yes, so they're embedded into the tooth socket. Okay. So then look at the anatomy of this tooth. Okay, if you see here, first of all, we have this enamel. Very important. What is an enamel? Okay, enamel is the shiny part which you see over the tooth. Okay, one very important thing about the enamel, Enamel is the hardest substance of our body. You might think that bones are hardest substance of your body. Of course not. Enamel is hardest substance. They're harder than the bones as well. It's harder than the bones as well, right? So enamel is simply what? It is made up of calcium phosphate. It's the hardest substance of our body, harder than the bones as well. The white shinier part which you see over here, the covering of the tooth, okay? And this enamel, it's said that it is so hard, it's harder than the steel. You know that how harder the steel is, isn't it? So it said that it's harder than your steel as well, the enamel. Okay, and its main function is just to protect your tooth, okay, against various abrasions, because you know that we chew the food, we might, eat anything, any hard substance with our teeth, right? So it needs to be protected. So enamel is there to protect the tooth against various wear and tear, against various abrasions. Okay, and then under the enamel is the blue thing which you see over here. This softer part which you see here is called as a dentin. Okay, the blue thing which you see over here. Okay, so this dentin, okay, is basically it is it's a softer living part, okay, softer calcified tissue, okay, this blue one. It's not as hard as enamel, so it's softer tissue over here, this dentin. Okay, and just under the dentin, if you see here, look at this one, this one, it is called as a pulp cavity. Okay, so what is a pulp cavity? In the pulp cavity, you will see that all your nerves, all the blood vessels, veins, capillaries, right, they are present within the pulp cavity. Okay, so look at this. Can you see these yellow color veins over here? Okay, the blood vessels, they're present all in the blood cavity. Okay, sometimes, when the tooth is, has gone bad, okay, if we have any decay in the tooth, okay, and you really don't want to extract your tooth, and you tell to your doctor that I don't want to extract my tooth, please try to save my tooth, maybe because of the aesthetic reasons, right? You want your smile to look good. At that time, your doctor will try its best to save your tooth. Okay, so he will suggest you, let's go for the RCT, root canal treatment, right? So let's say, what do they do in the root canal treatment? They open your tooth over here, okay, they pierce it over here, and they try to go deep down into the pulp cavity, this pulp cavity. Okay, and I don't know whether you have ever experienced this, the root canal treatment. Okay, they use smaller pins. They look like this. They look like these pins. Okay, and then they insert these pins in this pulp cavity. And what are they done trying to do? Okay, they will insert the pins into this pulp cavity, and they will do all this for a couple of days, right, for a couple of sittings. And the reason behind that is they're trying to destroy all the blood vessels over here. They're trying to destroy all the nerves over here, right, so that your tooth will stay there as just a tooth. Okay, it will have no nerve, right? So it will not pain, of course, right? So basically the pain starts only, for example, if the food particle will go through this into the pulp cavity, right? And then we have nerves over here. These nerves are sensitized, and they take the information to the brain, to the conscious brain, and we might feel the pain, right? So they try to destroy all this. All this is dead once you do the root canal treatment. All these things are dead once you do the root canal treatment. Is it clear? Everybody? Has anyone done the root canal treatment before? Yes. Okay, and then let me erase all this. Okay, and then what is the root canal here? Okay, the same pulp cavity, as you see, it goes deep down to the tooth, right? Look at this, right? So this pulp cavity, as it goes deep down to the tooth, it's called as a root canal. So if the same pulp cavity is there in the crown part, we just call it a pulp cavity. And the same pulp cavity, as it goes deep down into the root, we change the name. Its name is called as the root canal. Okay. So we can say what is the root canal? It's a pulp cavity, but within the root. Okay. And then if you see here, okay, we have periodontal ligament. What is the function of periodontal ligament? Periodontal ligament helps in the attachment of tooth into the what? Alveoli. Remember the tooth socket called an alveoli, right? So beneath this periodontal ligament, we have this something called the cement. Okay, or you can say the surface of the dentin right over here. Okay, it's covered with the substance called as the cement. Cement or cementum, we call it, right? So cementum is like a bone-like substance, okay? And its main function is to anchor the tooth to the jaw. So we can say that two things help in the anchoring of your tooth into the alveoli, into the tooth socket. One, as you can see over here, this cementum, a bone-like substance, and second, a ligament called as a periodontal ligament, which is nothing but a dense connective tissue. Okay, dense connective tissue. Okay, and it results in the formation of an immovable joint because our teeth, they don't move. Last semester, chapter number 5, what are the immovable joints of the mouth called? Where the, in which results, in the teeth. What is that joint called? Does anyone remember that? When we discuss the immovable joints of the head, and then we also discussed the immovable joint, which helps in the attachment of tooth to the alveolar process, or to the alveoli of the mandible and the maxilla. Does anyone remember that? Gomphoses, guys. Recall your chapter number 5 last semester, skeletal system. Gomphoses, right? Gomphoses is an immovable joint, okay, wherein the tooth is attached to the what? To the tooth socket or to the alveolar process. Isn't it? So we're just about to finish, and then we spoke about neck and the root and the I think that's all. That's all about the tooth which you need to know. Okay, and we all know that teeth are placed in two different bones. The top one called as the maxilla, the largest facial bone, and the low one called as the mandible, the only bone in our face which is movable, isn't it? So we learned all this in the last chapter, the mandible and the maxilla. Okay, that was all about the anatomy of the tooth, and we stop over here. And if you have a question, you can stay back. The rest of you can leave. Have a wonderful day ahead. Okay, and please remember, tomorrow we don't have a class. I will send an announcement as well. Because of the TOEFL exam, morning classes are cancelled, so we'll not have a class tomorrow. And Thursday we have a lab. Okay, Thursday we have a lab, and Sunday we'll finish this chapter. Okay, and hopefully and then Monday we can start then with the urinary system. So we might discuss the physiology in our Sunday's class. Okay. So do we have any
Doctor,
questions? Yes, dear.
did you take the attendance?
Attendance, I'll take the Moodle attendance. Don't worry about that. The way I was doing the
Okay,
attendance earlier, I didn't call out anybody's name today because as you
okay,
know that I'm
thank
not
you.
in the classroom today, right? I'm in the office
Right.
today. So I'll take the attendance from the Moodle. Don't worry. I'll mark you present. Thank you, dear. Yes, Aya, what about the last chapter in biochemistry? What we are going to take that chapter next week. I said that in yesterday's biochemistry class. We're going to have that chapter. Uh, in, okay, Wednesday we can't. Tomorrow we can't have a class. So next Sunday, I mean Monday, we'll take that last chapter in the biochemistry, and then we can start revision. Okay, Aya. You too. PPT is already there. Which PPT you're talking about, Leon? The biochemistry one? That's already there. Aya, are you with me in biochemistry or with Mr. Mohammed? I have uploaded the updated syllabus. I mean, long back when the semester, when the news of the semester squeezing was. Yeah, do you check your Moodle, Aya? Did you check the updated syllabus after the sem? Yes, 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 absolutely. So you need to check the syllabus in the Moodle. I've updated it long back, almost 2 weeks before when the announcement came. Right. So we just have one last chapter left out. Right. So we're going to discuss that chapter next week. Okay. Yes, dear. We finished the bio. Lian, bioenergetics is already there. Did you check the Moodle? Please check the Moodle. I have uploaded the recording also yesterday, and the bioenergetics chapter was already there. Okay. But then the revised one with all the diagrams, I've uploaded it yesterday itself. Okay. That's all. So since the lecture was, since the lecture